Hello travelers, Boardman21 here, and today got a build for you, the first one that I've done in almost a year. This one's going to be a Beastmaster based around using the Crow companion. We're going to have 6 of them going around, and we have them as an ice version. The reason for that is I completely base this around the unique, the sword, Apogee of Frozen Light that gives +3 levels to cold and necrotic minions, and we can dual wield those, so we get 6 levels for the crows, which allows you to build into a lot of damage. The other thing that we're building around is that Swipe can proc the companion skill without using its cooldown. So what we're going to do is we're going to be using Swipe to proc the Crow Storm, which does massive damage. That's what we've really built into every time that we use Swipe. Now this puts a cooldown on Swipe, but you can reduce it down. We have it to about 1.3, 1.4 seconds. You can get it down to about 1 if you really max out your cooldown recovery. But with that, you're going to be able to basically spam Stormcrow on enemies. The other thing that we're building around is to increase the Crow damage. Your melee attacks have a 20% chance to give them more damage and to also give them more base crit chance. And so we're going to have Upheaval going off whenever we have Swipe on cooldown that's going to have those buffed almost have 100% uptime. And when you have those up, what you're going to end up getting is around 100% crit chance with your crows, and that's going to give them a huge amount of survivability to a bunch of passives. The aspect of the Lynx is going to let them leech 15% of their crit damage as health, and so since they're going to be having 100% crit whenever you've got some melee hits going off, it's going to give them huge healing. So you're going to have big damage numbers with Stormcrow. You're going to have 6 crows doing decent damage whenever Stormcrow's not being used. You get to teleport with Stormcrow for fast mobility through your echoes and moving around and dodging one-shot mechanics, and then on top of that, your crows are going to have super high survivability. I'm at about 300, just over 300 corruption with this build, and my crows never die, not unless I let them sit in like Moon Spiral, which is something that's just a huge dot that if you stand in because you're not paying attention will kill you almost every time. But most of the boss mechanics and things you can stand in, your crows can stand in, and you can do just fine with survivability. So basically this entire build is just going to be you going forward, using Stormcrow to teleport forward, using Swipe to hit enemies with Stormcrow and doing big damage with that, and using Upheaval whenever you want to buff the damage that your companions are doing. Your survivability is going to be using Warcry, so whenever you're at low health or just reduced health, you can Warcry, which gives you invincibility for 1 second, and then at the same time it's going to heal you basically up to full health. It scales with healing effectiveness, and at low health it's doubled with healing. So right now I have it set up to where I'm healed for almost 2,000 health every time that I use Warcry, which is almost all of my health. And then you have a ton of damage reductions in this build. You've got Berserker at low health, you have Endurance at low health, you have Aspect of the Boar, because you're using a lot of melee hits, you'll have that up almost 100% of the time. You get reduced damage from nearby enemies. There's just a ton of damage reduction. You can also get your armor up and things, and use your blessings for that as well. But let's go ahead and get into the details for this build guide. Since we are basically starting fresh, it's been a year since I've done one, I'm going to be going into a lot more details in the skill tree section, and of course in the timestamps below you can skip ahead to each one of those. If you don't want to listen, you can just screenshot it and put your points where mine are. But let's go ahead and dive in. For skills, I'm running Swipe, Summon Stormcrow, Warcry, Upheaval, and Summon Wolf. The Summon Wolf is just for the +1 maximum companion. On the toolbar, we won't use it. We have Summon Frenzy Totem, which will passively, whenever it's procced, which we can have 100% uptime, will give our Stormcrows increased cast speed, which will be really nice for them just to attack a bit faster. First, for Swipe, the way that we have this built is that we have 5 points in Way of the Hunt, 5 points in Wingardium Reach, 1 point in Claws of the Bear. This gives it a cooldown, but this unlocks the 1 point in Primal Resonance, which is going to have the nearest companion ability on hit. So when we use Swipe, hit an enemy, it will proc the nearest companion's ability. Now we only have Stormcrows, so it's always going to be Stormcrow. This does not put that companion ability on cooldown, which means you can still use it as a teleport skill whenever it comes off cooldown. That also means that since we have the cooldown down to 1.5 seconds on Swipe, every 1.5 seconds we are spamming Stormcrow for that huge AoE effect. Then we also have 2 points in Cooling for that kill threshold, 2 points in Blood Beast, 1 point in Rending, and 3 points in Duality of Nature, so that we get some mana back every time that we do use Swipe, which is nice if we're proccing a lot of things like Warcry and the Frenzy Totem constantly using mana to do that. It's nice to get some back with Swipe. Otherwise you might have to build into a little bit of mana regen on your skills. For the summon storm crows, which we have +7 levels to, 6 of those levels just come from dual wielding those swords because each one gives +3. We have another +1, which just takes the tier 1 affix on your chest for storm crow. We have this built up to try and do as much damage as possible with the actual storm crow ability, but we also have it built so that our melee hits will really boost their damage. So we've got 2 points in shocking display and 1 point in frigid wings. This converts them to cold, which you have to do. The lightning crows will not get the +6 levels from the sword, so you got to convert to cold, which means you will need to put 2 points in that shocking display and then the 1 in frigid wings. Then we've got 2 points in thundering strike, 1 point in expansive pulse, and then 2 points in thunderous blast. This gives us 30% more damage with crow storm per crow that we have, and we have 6 of them, so that's 180% more damage, as well as reduces the cooldown on it so we can manually cast it. Then we have 1 point in sky passage so that we teleport with crow storm, so it's a really nice movement ability for us, and it will teleport our crows with us so that we can put them all in one spot and keep attacking. This also is nice to group them so that when you Warcry, you can buff them as well. Then we have 2 points in Storm Breath, so that damage per shock stack, which is converted to Frostbite since we've converted them to cold, increases the damage. This is really useful against rares and bosses that you get a lot of hits against to really boost the damage against them. 2 points in Shatterbolt, 2 points in Pincers, and then 2 points in Observe and Learn. And what this does is our melee hits have a 20% chance to buff them for 10 seconds. Each buff will give them 8% more base crit chance. Now you can have up to 3 stacks of this, which they have 5% base crit chance passively, and we can give them another 24% if we get them 3 buffs of this, which puts them at 29%, which means they only need about 250% increased crit chance to have 100% crit, which we can also easily give them, and I'll show you that with Warcry, plus you have aspect of the links. Between those two, they have enough to get over 100% crit chance. Then we have 2 points in Avis, 1 point in Nimbleness, 2 points in Shredding Beaks, and then this is where you can play around. You can put points into Murder of Crows, which gives them more damage. With 6 crows, that's 24% more damage per point. But I put my points in Huntsman because this gives them 60% more damage up to 3 stacks. So we can get 180% damage here when we use our melee attacks, which in this case will be Upheaval over and over again, to give them those buffs, and you can get 180%. If you're not using Upheaval or doing a lot of melee hits, you're not using Swipe very often, then it's not really going to work too much, and the points would be better off putting them in Murder of Crows. And then we have 1 point in Feathered Storm, which gives them a bunch of shred chance as well as shred effect for the armor, which will boost their damage. This is really useful again against bosses and high health rares. We have Warcry. Warcry has a lot of things going on. It's very defensive for us, and it's also very offensive for our crows, and I'll explain. So first, we want to get the cooldown as low as possible, and that's going to be for a couple of reasons. The biggest one being the 1 point in Juggernaut, because we're invulnerable after Warcry. So we got 1 point in Staggering Roar, 1 point in Kinetic Scream, 2 points in Eviscerating Howl, and 1 point in Shallow Breath to reduce that cooldown by 50%. Along with the CDR on our gear, we have the cooldown down to 3.7 seconds. So every 3.7 seconds, which we put this on autocast, means we get 1 second of invulnerability. So we're invincible basically 25% of the time. If you get that cooldown down, you can get it down to about 3 seconds. You can be invincible for up to 1/3 of the time, which is huge. Then we've got 3 points in Breath of Eterra, which also heals us. Now this heals you for a base of 300. It scales with healing effectiveness, and it's doubled altogether if you're at low health. So when you take a big hit, you get into your endurance and you're at low health. When you use Warcry, not only do you become invincible for a second, but you're also going to be healed for a bunch. I have about 150% healing effectiveness, which means that this heals me for 750 health doubled at low, so 1500 health at low health, which basically means if I drop down to like 600 health, it heals me almost all the way back up to full, and it's going to do that every 3.7 seconds, which is huge. Then we have 2 points in Deep Aura and 4 points in Battle Cry for that 100% crit. This is for you and your allies, and this lasts 4 seconds. Now again, this goes off under 4 seconds, so it's 100% uptime of this buff. We then have 1 point in Germon's Wrath, which converts it all to cold. 3 points in Frost Claw for increased cold damage. This again is for you and your allies, and since your crows are cold, it's going to affect them and give them increased cold damage. And 1 point in Bringer of Winter for another 100% crit chance. Again, 4 seconds. So with this one and the 4 points of Battlecry, you're giving your crows 200% increased crit chance when you use Warcry and hit them with it, or if they're in the area, which is huge. With that and the other buffs inside their skill tree, you can get to 100% crit really, really easily. Then we have Upheaval, which Upheaval is just something which is ranged, but it counts as a melee attack, which makes it really easy for us to stay a little bit away from the fight, hit the enemies, use a melee attack to do it, spam it a bunch, which gives our crows all of their buffs. At the same time, we also use this a little bit defensively, and I'll explain how. That's with the 2 points in Terrain Delving and then 3 points in Primal Bulwark. This allows us to get up to 3 stacks, which we usually have 100% uptime as long as you're spamming it pretty often, which gives us a bit more armor and endurance threshold per point of attunement that we have, which is really nice. It's a little bit more defensive, not huge, but it just adds to everything else that we have. Then we got 1 point for the range, 2 points in Unstoppable Strength just for a bit more damage, 4 points in Brutish Engagement so that when you are right on the enemy, you're doing a little bit more damage. Again, this is not your main damaging skill, so it's not a big deal. 3 points in Inexhaustible, so it's not costing all of our mana. 1 point in Mantle Strike, so that it can't be dodged, so that you're having the best chance to always hit enemies and get those buffs for the crows. 2 points in Maiming Bubble, 1 point in Glacial Cascade, because everything's cold, we might as well make this cold as well. And then 1 point in Frozen Collision just for a little bit more damage. Again, this won't be your main damaging skill, it's just being used as a spammable melee attack that's ranged, so that you can get those buffs for the crows. And then for Summon Wolf, again, we're just using this for the +1 maximum companion. All you want is that 1 point in Pack Hunters so that you can have +1 maximum companion. This will let you get your 6th crow for all that damage. All the other points you can put anywhere on the tree that you want. It doesn't matter. Just get 1 point in Pack Hunters. Again, you're not actually summoning these, so it doesn't matter. For passives, I've got 25 points in the Primalist base class, with 6 points in Gift of the Wilderness, 1 point in Natural Attunement, 6 points in Wisdom of the Wild, 1 point in Harmony of Blades, 5 points in Hunter's Restoration, because we do some hits, so this is nice to give us a little bit of health back, not much, but with 1 point in Hunter's Emanation, it also helps heal the minions, as well as give them a little bit of damage. And then the big one, 5 points in Berserker, has us take less damage when we're at low life. That's 25% less damage, which is a big amount and helps keep you alive, especially from those one-shots. We then have 69 points in our Mastery, the Beastmaster, with 8 points in 𝐒𝐿 Strength for that less damage taken from nearby enemies, 4 points in Boar Heart, and 5 points in Porcine Constitution, so that we take 30% reduced damage when we have Aspect of the Boar. And again, with 5 points in Boar Heart, we have a chance to proc that on melee hit, and we're doing a ton of those, so you should have 100% uptime of this. We then have 3 points in Call of the Pack, 6 points in the Chase, 8 points in Life in the Wilderness for some extra health, as well as Endurance Threshold, and then our companions will also get our Endurance, which is really nice for them. 10 points in Avian Shelter gives us more Endurance Threshold, as well as Physical Resist for us and our minions, our companions. 8 points in Cry of the Lynx. What's nice about this is whenever we use the Storm Crow or Crow Storm ability, it's going to proc Aspect of the Lynx, giving us increased crit chance, and on crit hits it gives us a percentage of that leached as health, and that's with the 6 points in Serrated Claws for the increased critical strike multiplier and critical strike chance. And then of course you have the critical bite, so that when we do a crit and when our crows do a crit, 15% of the damage they're doing, and with Storm Crow that's a huge amount, heals them basically back up to full life, which is really nice. So we're going to have that all maxed out. That's going to be the main thing that you really want to help boost your damage and your defense for your crows so that they don't die. And then we have 1 point in Nature's Embrace for that +1 maximum companion. We got 8 points in the Shaman, with all 8 points in Silent Protector. Since we do have Frenzy Totem going off, this gives us 200 flat armor as well as some mana regen, and we have 100% uptime of the Frenzy Totem, so it's really nice just for a little extra boost of armor for defense, and then the mana regen so that you can spam Upheaval as much as you want. And then 10 points in the Druid. We got 5 points in Chitinous Plating for that flat armor and endurance, and then 5 points in Druidic Prowess for that attunement and strength. The reason we went with that is because the Storm Crows gain damage, they gain life, and then they also get Armor Shred chance and Armor Shred effect based on that strength and attunement, so it's really nice to get a double bonus here for that. So we went ahead and put 5 points in there. You can take those out if you want and have a better chance than the Beastmaster with points and primal aspects to have all of your aspects last longer if you're finding the aspect of the boar, aspect of the lynx are just not staying up long enough for you, but you should have plenty of time on them as long as you're actively battling. For the character sheet and how you see the gameplay, you'll see that I do not have all my resistances capped yet. We're still gearing a bit. However, for defense, I do have my endurance capped, I do have the critical strike avoidance capped, and I do have a bit of armor. Again, your armor will go a little bit higher. If I put a frenzy totem out, you'll see that it jumps up a bit, and then also you get a little bit of flat armor when you're using Upheaval based on how many points of attunement you have to increase that amount of endurance threshold and flat armor thanks to the node that we took. And then again, you do want to cap out all of your resistances. I just haven't got there yet, and we can get quite a bit more armor, which will be nice so that we can get even more damage reduction through that. If you're finding that your survivability is lacking, you can definitely throw on shield instead of dual wielding. That'll reduce the damage you take, plus a shield will give you some block chance, which would be nice. However, I found that even with all the defense that we have, dual wielding, we've been perfectly fine in the 300 plus corruption. And then for the inventory, again, we're dual wielding the Apogee of Frozen Light for all those cold minion skill levels, and then this also gives minions still more cold damage against chilled enemies, and we have a lot of chill chance on our melee hits, especially with Upheaval, so that's nice for bosses and just doing a bit more damage. Not to mention this comes with a ton of flat melee cold damage, so Upheaval isn't doing horrible damage, although it's not great, but it's not like it's doing nothing. And then we have Artor's Legacy for the +1 Maximum Companion. You don't have to wear this. You could definitely have just an Exalted Home or regular Crafted Home that has tier 5, 6, or 7 of Crow spell damage. The damage should be pretty equivalent, and then you can also get flat and increased health on that, which will definitely boost your defense. For me, I haven't been able to find a helm with at least tier 5 Crow spell damage on it yet. Once I find one, I'll probably make the switch. And then for everything else, you're just going for increased health, a little bit of minion health. You don't need anything else for minions. You don't need minion regen, and you don't need minion dodge. All you need is the minion health increase, because again, they're healing a percentage of their maximum health every time they do a crit, which is very, very often. So just giving them a ton of health is all that they need. I'll hover over these, and then I'll cover the idols, which for idols, basically I'm just going with as much increased health as possible. So if you can get the hybrid idols that have increased and flat health, those are going to be your biggest thing. I'm looking for a bunch more of them. We should be able to get between 3,000 and 4,000 health, and at that point, you should be able to push as high in corruption as you possibly want. And then for blessings, nothing super important, but getting endurance, critical strike avoidance, and flat health is really just going to help your defense. All the blessings are basically used for defense in this. You can get minion health if you want, not a big thing, you can get plenty of it on gear, but nothing super important. This build comes together without the blessings. This kind of just finesses your defenses when you're doing that end game hunting for them. And then for how to play the build, so I put the Warcry and the Summon Frenzy Totem on autocast because there's just too many buttons for me and they're constantly going off. Now Warcry, every time it goes off, remember, it's making you invincible for 1 second, it's healing you, and then it's also giving crit chance and increased cold damage to your crows. The Frenzy Totem is going to give you that flat armor and some mana regen, as well as it's going to give the Storm Crows, as long as they're in range of the Frenzy Totem, increased cast speed. So it's really nice even though we didn't skill out the tree. And then all we're going to do is when you use Swipe, you'll see that when we hit an enemy with Swipe, we get the Storm Crow ability, but it didn't put it on cooldown. So every time that we swipe, you're going to get that nice big attack. And then as we use melee attacks, it's going to boost the damage and the crit chance of the crows. So we can do some hits with that, and then you swipe, and you'll see, boom, 250,000 damage. You're getting that high crit chance with Storm Crow. And then you can manually do it, which is going to allow us to teleport when you use their ability. So you give them a nice big boost with some melee hits. As you hit enemies, you can teleport in, and then you can swipe to do it, and you can swipe, you know, like I said, as you get that cooldown down every 1 to 1.5 seconds, which is huge. It just helps you clear out huge areas of mobs and take out bosses pretty quick. But that's it. I'm gonna go ahead and leave you guys with some gameplay. Comment below if you like the build or not, and hopefully I got plenty more of them coming up in this next patch.